All right, so welcome everybody to the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of the National Black MBA's Authentic Leadership, Bringing Your Authentic Self male panel. This panel is for all, it's just featuring male panelists. And so we want to say thank you from our chapter leaders for attending this event tonight, taking time out of your day to be with us, especially our speakers and our attendees that are on the East Coast. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us tonight. So before we get started, we're going to go over some housekeeping rules, and then I'll introduce myself. I'll introduce, the chapter, and then we'll go over the agenda really quick, and then we'll get into the panel. All right, so housekeeping rules. We only have two. All attendees are muted, so please remain on mute. When we get to the Q&A session, if we have enough time, you can unmute yourself and you can ask your question live. But please post your questions using the chat function at any time. We'll go to that Q&A session, and Melsha will help us out with the chat and the Q&A portion. So there's a Q&A field. If you see it on your updated Zoom, you should see a Q&A box and you should see a chat box. So drop your questions in either box and we'll answer them at the Q&A session. So our quick agenda, housekeeping I already went over. I'll do the Bay Area chapter overview. Then we'll get into the introduction of Jeff Hatchell, our moderator, and Jeff will introduce our speakers. And then we'll go into the panel session, Q&A session, and then we'll close the session for the night. So to start off with our chapter, we are the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of the National Black MBA. We are a volunteer-ran 501c3 organization that covers all of the Northern California regions. Our members span between Fresno, Monterey counties, up to the Bay Area and Sacramento counties as well. So we are approximately 400 members strong with a network of over 4,000 supporters. So again, thank you all members, all supporters for being a part of our network. So the San Francisco Bay Area chapter exists to provide innovative programming such as this, build partnerships with key stakeholders, increase awareness and facilitate access to graduate management education programs, and to cultivate diversity and inclusion. Our mission and our vision is aligned with the National Black MBA, our national headquarters. And so our mission of the National Black MBA is to lead in the creation of educational, wealth building, and growth opportunities for those historically underrepresented throughout their careers as students, entrepreneurs, and professionals. We accomplish our mission and our vision through our programming. So we have 5 channels of engagement. We go through education, career, entrepreneurship, leadership, and lifestyle. So those are some of the ways that we give back to our members through those channels of engagement. So what we're going to do, told you, is going to be super quick, so I want to get into this panel. I'm excited about this. I'm going to introduce our moderator, and then I'm going to go off screen, and we're going to leave our panelists and our moderator on screen for you to view. So I'm going to introduce Jeff Hatchell, who is our moderator for tonight. Jeff is an executive coach. He has over 20 years of experience working at Fortune 500 organizations in sales management and leadership roles, including working as Global Director of Sales Leadership Development with American Express. Over his career, Jeff has amassed leadership, marketing, and management experience with significant accomplishments in the finance, banking, and office product industry. Jeff is an experienced corporate facilitator, a professional motivational speaker, and a published author. Jeff has coached mid and senior level executives in the Fortune 500 organizations and led leadership workshops with their teams. Jeff received his MBA degree from Nova Southern Eastern University and his Bachelor's of Business Administration and Marketing degree from Howard University. Jeff, I'm going to let you take it away. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to spotlight you guys. I'm going to take myself away and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Maisha. And I do want to begin by saying thanks to Maisha and also to Melsha Nicole Key for their leadership in bringing this to us on today. And definitely want to applaud you because I think this is an awesome idea. The other thing I just want to say as we are about to really get into this discussion is that I want to ensure that we all get value out of this. Yes, we are coming together and it's a group of brothers, but the idea is for us to really get some takeaways. And one of the things that I discovered that's important is whenever you participate or attend in anything is that you be intentional and getting something out of it. Have a plan to have a takeaway and think about, what am I going to do differently based on my time here? And I want us to have that in mind, because if we have that mindset, we will get value out of it. Coming in with, I'm going to get something out of it. So be that one. So when somebody asks you, hey, what happened? And I don't want it just to be like, oh, it was good, you had to be there. But to be able to share, you know what? I got this out of it. I got that out of it. This is something that I'm going to do to apply to my work situation. I'm going to help other people. So I want to make sure that it's something that's going to be a difference maker, because we have a distinguished panel of men. Yes, we have men tonight that's going to be talking about authentic leadership. The beauty of this group is that we are, even though one thing we have in common for sure, well, we have a whole bunch in common, but one thing is we are all Black men, but we have a diversity of backgrounds, different personalities. So you're going to hear from people who have background in the community, background in the entertainment or sports industry, background in Fortune 500 companies. So a nice variety on tonight. So I want to begin by, first of all, I want to define authentic leadership. I'm going to introduce just high level. I'm just primarily giving name and really kind of name and title. And then I'm going to ask each of the panelists to begin by sharing their definition of authentic leadership. And then they can highlight anything else they'd like to in terms of more a background about themselves. So everybody good with that? Cool. All right, so I'm going to begin. So here's my definition of authentic leadership. It's being in alignment with your values, leveraging your strengths and experiences despite your environment, while fostering your natural behavior style in an area of influence. So that's how I'm defining it. So it's primarily being yourself, your authentic self, regardless of your environment, but yet knowing how to adjust given your environment, because some environments, yes, we do have to adapt to flow with that environment. So on that note, I first want to highlight or introduce to you, I'm going to say all their names and then I'm going to have them elaborate and then define what authentic leadership means to them. But first, I want to let you know, Mohamed Nadiri is a managing partner of a real estate development company called Axis Development Group, multi-million-dollar purchases in the Bay Area and beyond. I'm going to let him elaborate on that. I also want to introduce, before he's going to be the first one to speak, I also want to introduce to you Usama Young. Usama Young is no joke. And you may recognize that name because he comes from the NFL. Yes, he was a Raider, not just a Raider. He played on a variety of teams. And my man actually went to the Super Bowl. So we got a panelist that won and went to the Super Bowl and actually won. And he's doing some great things in our community. And I can't wait to hear what he has to share. And I also wanted to introduce to you Tremayne Bess. Tremaine Bess is a vice president within our HR area of the Gap company. How many of you have ever bought your Gap jeans and went to the Gap to get whatever? My man is the vice president of HR, head of what we call HR Strategic Growth Office, and he brings a host of other experiences to the table. So on that note, I'm going to go back to Mohamed. And Mohamed, feel free to elaborate in terms of what you do, but define for us, what is authentic leadership?
Well, one, thanks for having us all here together and making this happen. MBA and Maisha, Melsha, Jeff, Usama, and Tremaine, thank you all very much. For me, authentic leadership is really just being yourself when being yourself is not always the easiest thing to do. It's always easy to be authentic when when it's hip, when it's cool, when, that's the thing to do. But if who you are is not necessarily what's in fashion at the time, but what you bring to the table is what's needed for whatever skill or whatever job you're doing, then that's who you need to be. Because if you're not yourself, then you can't be your best self. If you're always trying to be somebody else, you can never be the maximum of who you are. To go back to kind of what I do, I'm a managing partner at Axis Development Group. we're depending on how you value it, a $400 to $500 million portfolio real estate development shop. We do mixed use urban infill stuff. So kind of 100 to 200 units over 5 to 20,000 feet of retail. We're in San Francisco, a building you all might, if those are from San Francisco, we own the building in Union Square where Mastro's is. So that's one of our big things. And we have buildings in Dogpatch and in Mission. And we also have projects down in LA, in Hollywood, on USC's campus and in Santa Monica. And then we also do stuff up in Sacramento, and then also in the Northwest, Portland and Seattle. So, and we're looking to do some stuff in Vegas as well. So if anybody has anything about that, always let us know. But that's what we do. We are kind of going back to authentic leadership as I wrap it up. We are really intent on bringing folks who look like us into the business. So when we have opportunities to do, when bring on subs or marketing folks or finance folks or consultants, anybody who looks like us, we sit here and say, hey, we sign the front of checks, so we get to have a say in who signs the back of checks. So that's kind of how we look at it. Now I'll pause there and let it go on.
All right. One thing I was thinking you would mention is 100 Black men.
Oh, I want to shut up for a little bit. No, I mean, I'm the former chairman of the 100 Black Men in the Bay Area. I'm now on the national board and focused on economic empowerment. So I run the economic empowerment activities for the entire, all chapters. So we have an international organization. So all the US and international chapters, I run the economic empowerment.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Usama, define authentic leadership and share a little bit more about yourself with us.
Yes, I will. First off, I gotta say thank you. Echo what Mohamed said, Tremaine. I'm just honored to be amongst this esteemed panel. Jeff, thank you for leading the conversation. Maisha, Melsha, know you in the background holding it down. Thank you all. Man, Jeff, you gave me a heck of an intro. I appreciate that, first off, because I've been done playing for the last several years, but I felt like an athlete again. I'll say first my intro. I run an organization, founded and currently serve as the president of Believe in You. It's a youth organization which we empower youth through volunteering, mentoring, and civic engagement. And through COVID, we kind of changed up our efforts. We turned a lot of the in-person meetings that we were having to virtual sessions and weekly calls. And we truly embraced just that authentic leadership, so to speak. And that was me being a leader in the sense of understanding who I am, embracing who I am, and putting it out there, being transparent with my team, with who I name young leaders, because they will eventually be running things and they'll hold it down once we step aside. But ultimately, authentic leaders are exactly what Mohamed said, what Jeff said. It's being you even when it's tough to be you. Stepping in and understanding what you are, the strength that you bring, the acumen that you bring, and in the reality, your identity, and not being ashamed of it. At the same time, understanding when you can leverage, being able to have the versatility to switch and say, you know what, I've got to adjust my approach to find success. But ultimately, it's putting work in, and also knowing that in leadership, you are a servant as well. And being a servant leads to you preparing the next ones in line to lead. So short definition, somewhat wordy, but I truly embrace it. And I'm just fortunate to be able to talk more about this and hear about what you all do and be intentional about learning from what you all say.
Love it. Love it. One thing I'll say, I really appreciate what I've heard so far, because we have two very well accomplished panelists who just highlighted in terms of from entrepreneurial, working in corporate, but they're still giving back in an authentic way. That is so beautiful to see and to hear. Tremaine represents corporate, like me, he kind of has that corporate background. So Tremaine, from your experience and your background, how do you define authentic leadership?
So first I want to start off the same way, thanking everybody, thanking Maisha, Melsha, the entire San Francisco MBA chapter for putting this together. And I'm honored to be on this panel. So authentic leadership for me is basically everything that you all have just described. I think my 2 cents is just adding, less modifications, depending on what your perspective may be or is. But bringing all of it to the plate, making less modifications as possible related to tone, speech, in terms of code switching, but it's all based on a perspective. So I always add that 2 cents in. And I think just a little bit more, I like to tell people of introducing Tremaine. I always say there's another person too. His name is Peanut. And Tremaine is from Miami. Peanut is from Liberty City. These are the same people that I'm talking about here. I'm also at Bethune College in Daytona Beach, Florida, college, and a member of Psi fraternity.
Is this my connection, or is Tremaine going in and out? Can you guys hear him?
I think so.
Okay. I thought
Can
it
you
may
hear
have.
me?
We were hearing you. We were flowing with you, and you talked about Peanut and being from Liberty City. Then the last, I think you broke off on when you said you're Kappa Alpha Psi. You still with us? All right, we see you. I see you. I don't know if you're frozen or you speaking. Can anybody else hear him? Okay. All right. You may have to check your connection, but I'll let's continue. Let's continue in this discussion. It looks like everybody's muted on our end. All right, now. All right, so I want to go, Mohamed, I want to go back to you. And I want to go back to you based on, your experience. So, you're acquiring multi-million-dollar properties, San Francisco Bay Area, and other areas, and love to just kind of hear, being who you are in this industry, share with us in terms of some of the challenges or some of the things that may come up. I'd imagine, especially in your industry, when people see you, what happens? Help us understand, what are some of the barriers that you see in your experiences within your industry, and how do you overcome them?
Well, I mean, the one big thing about kind of corporate real estate at this point, and that's kind of where we are now. We're in the institutional grade real estate field, is that there's not a whole lot of, when it comes to transactions, there's not a whole lot of actual in-person stuff all the time. Most of what happens over email, things are DocuSign now. And I say that because it's not oftentimes it's not until after we finish something that folks realize who we are. And I laugh because I think of one of our projects. It was in San Francisco. We bought the land, 17 million bucks, right? So we had our equity fund behind us. So let's be clear, it's not my money. So I don't want anybody, but we had the money, we had the fundraise behind us, and we closed on it. And then maybe a month later, the sellers reached out to us and said, "Hey, we actually never met y'all. We'd love to hear y'all. We see the project that y'all are doing. It looks incredible." And when we met them, the look on their face when they saw me and my partner, two Black males, 30s and 40s, it was like, what? Like, they were like, "Do we get a check and see if the wire cleared?" Now it's like a month ago. But that's a lighthearted way to say that, a lot of the challenges get rougher as you go, the higher you go, because as tough as it is to break into something, oftentimes we sit here, once you think once you get in, all right, you're in, and now I've crossed those hurdles. It's not until you try to rise up higher and higher that you realize just how stacked the game is against you, and a lot of times, even though you have success, you have higher frustrations because you see just how close you are to actually being where you think you can be, and you realize just how entrenched the obstacles are. As an example, the goalposts always get moved, right? So when we first started, it's kind of like, hey, what projects do y'all have? What projects have you done? And you point to projects and you go, oh, well, that was when you're with another shop. So what have you done on your own? Then you sit here and you do your own projects, and you're kind of sitting here saying, well, tell me about them. What did you actually do on them? Well, we're the principals. Okay. And the goalposts just keep moving and keep moving. And at some point, you just want to sit here and be like, hey, let's go look at these buildings. They're like 5 buildings, 6 buildings in this one town. You can go talk to investors, find out what their round trip was, how did they do? And it's just really frustrating because at the end of the day, your access to capital and your access to resources, you realize just how difficult that is. And you never really can do enough. It's really a matter of being fortunate and just kind of, being in a position and looking at things and seeing value that other people don't see. Yeah. And, and just moving from there. And I'm not sure if I fully answered your question or if I answered a different question, but that's what came to mind as far as this kind of the hurdles that you face, moving up and whatnot. Folks are more than willing to let us be involved and make them money. But once you sit here and start saying, hey, I'm trying to sit here and make money for myself, all of a sudden, it's like, well, wait a minute. Shouldn't you be worrying about this and shouldn't you be worrying about that? Well, why weren't we worrying about that when I worked for you? Why is it now? Why now is it important that all of a sudden I remember where I come from and focus on affordable housing? Not there's anything wrong with affordable housing, but why can't I do market rate housing? Why do I have to be relegated to affordable housing where fees are capped and income is capped and there's no upside? Why does that need to be my realm?
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And what comes to mind as you were sharing, Mohamed, is about credibility in terms of what you bring to the table in terms of experience. And if they know, hey, they're able to get the deal done, they're able to put money in our pocket, then all right, I'm not as sensitive. They may be surprised and shocked, when they see you, but it's like, hey, they're making it happen. They're getting it done. But that may be sounds like that may be a part of the process, but you are breaking down barriers to help more of us enter within that area and to be authentically who we are. So I want to, Usama, I want to go to you before I go back to Tremayne. And Usama, you had mentioned that, of course, you have instant credibility with the NFL behind you, but now you're mentoring and helping youth, brown, black, all different color youth. And I'm curious from your perspective, and you know how a lot of our youth, they like, I'm just keeping it real. I'm just keeping it real. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just curious, how do you mentor and teach Black and brown communities when it comes to authentic leadership and what it really is beyond I'm keeping it real?
I think keeping it real is also adding in a level of transparency and a level of vulnerability. And when I speak to some of these youth that we serve, some of them come from tough upbringings, and they don't want to show that they are hurt or are sad or have been affected by any traumatic experience. Mm-hmm. So I try to be as transparent, just outwardly showing them that it's okay. You can be tough. I played a tough game and I lived it, and I had a tough upbringing. I was injured. I cried when I exited. When I dealt with certain trauma and experience, it was okay to let that out. Oftentimes, I think when you do that, when you share those feelings with them, that transparency, they see another side of you. And certain ones might look at you as this superhuman person that they're living up to or looking up to. And then they say, oh, wow, this is who this is what I need to do to get this out, just get this weight off of me, because so much of it is held in. And I think as a people, oftentimes we don't want to we don't want to let down our guard. That's when we get taken advantage of, when we let down our guard, when we show someone what can get to us. So oftentimes letting them know it's okay to have some barriers to be guarded to an extent, but in this safe place, that's what we want to celebrate. We want to celebrate those opportunities where we're open and where we're encouraging it, and we're letting each other know, look, it's okay. Because one thing we've been reminded of throughout these last couple of years, and even more so with this microscope on it through COVID and not necessarily being able to move around in the way that we usually do. All the stuff that's gone on in terms of our marginalized communities, it's got a spotlight on it. And now we are front and center, and we can say, hey, look, we've been hurt for a long time. Our people have been hurt for a long time, and we're getting it out. And now that we're getting it out, we're also showing how tough we are, how those that were before us that I can't even imagine coming up in my dad's time and my grandmother's time and what they went through to build what we're standing on now, it is truly superhuman. So when I build them up, I talk about how our roots, where we come from, their parents, their grandparents, whoever's taking care of them right now, some of the hardships that they've gone through, but now understand that they can take the lead. And with that, that means, hey, letting some of that stuff go, getting some of that out of your spirit, stop holding it in, and then we can move forward. And that's part of it, but it's also a reality check for me because, hey, I transitioned from the game and now I'm in this real world. And people are like, yo, you made millions of dollars. What are you doing working? Why don't you sit back and relax? That's not in me. I want to effectuate change in a positive way. And just because I crossed the river doesn't mean I'm not going to make sure that I bring that raft back and then show you how to get over as well. Nah, we got to help one another out. And that's what I've tried to do. And highlighting the importance of being transparent, the importance of community, and ultimately group economics as well.
No, I'm loving what you're saying, man. You preaching a beautiful message, and you added a whole nother element to our definition of authenticity by using the word transparency in terms of, especially as a man. And it's so important. I'm sure we can all relate to this. Being transparent is not easy. It definitely takes courage. And as a man, and I'll say, a lot of us, my parents' generation, my dad, I don't know if I've ever seen him cry. Matter of fact, back in the day, it was even tough for our dads to tell us they loved us. Really, you start hitting it from back in the day. Now I think we may go overboard with, oh, I love you, son, and can embrace and hug. But we didn't, a lot of us didn't get that, because it was part of just being so hardcore and men don't cry and all these things. But for you to mention, and that you are training and teaching our youth the importance in relating it to being authentic is, hey, if you hurt and get it out, let it out. And, that positively impacts so many areas in terms of emotional illnesses that happens is, we're holding all this in, trying to portray one thing when in reality, authentically, we're hurting. And to share that is just powerful. And I think it's very important. So I appreciate that. So I want to get back to Tremayne. Tremayne, you left us off. You were giving more of a background in terms of yourself, and you were, mentioning, tell us a little bit more about Peanut versus Tremayne.
Yeah, so, Peanut and Tremayne are the same people. I typically say Tremayne is from Miami and Peanut is from Liberty City. Both were raised by a single mother. She had 5 boys. I'm next to the oldest, attended Bethune-Cookman College in Daytona Beach on a music scholarship. So I tell people in my profession that I've only been compensated to do 2 things. One is HR. The other is I used to be a singer, a professional singer back in another life. Those are the only 2 things I really claim to know how to do. Anything else I really don't claim to know how to do at all.
If you only had the last name Hawkins, Tremayne, if you only had the last name Hawkins, was related, but that's another story.
I get that all the time.
Oh, is that right? Sorry about that. Sorry, you good.
But no, that's just, a little bit about me. And I always tell people I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, actually celebrating my 25 years this year.
Congrats.
So yes, and so that's me.
So share a little bit, if you don't mind, just in terms of, corporate background. What about communication? Communicating authentically and different people's style. And I'm sure you get it. You see a variety of styles. Can you talk to us a little bit about authentically and communicating?
Absolutely. And so you will notice, even on this call, as a group of Black men and women that join it from a participant standpoint, my dialect of emphasis, it changes throughout. And so my perspective is different because, like I said, I was born and raised in Liberty City. I was only the second person in my family to attend college. So there were certain words and nomenclature and terms that were used in my household that I wasn't used to in corporate America. And so, I had to kind of listen, but I find in corporate America, a lot of managers and leaders of others assess people based on their communication style, really their preferred communication style. And especially this Generation Z or millennial group, they really like to communicate through text or through PowerPoint presentations. And that's a way of communicating. And the verbal communication may not be so apparent in some ways. And so communication takes a form in different ways. There's code switching that typically happens. And for me, I like to say I'm a real HR type of guy. I'm strategic, but I keep it real as well. And so the way that we're talking now, generally, I talk this way and work now. It took 20 plus years to get here, but there is I'm always cautious and always call out communication.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. So I'm curious, Mohamed, I want to go back to you before I ended up going back to Usama. But you notice how Tremaine, mentioned Tremaine, and then he mentioned Peanut from Liberty City. Do you have a peanut in you, so to speak, Mohamed? And you know what I mean by that. Depending on how you grew up, and I can see Usama's thinking about it, because Usama's from DC and I went to Howard, so I know Southeast DC is no joke. But you know what I mean, from around the way. I'm from Trenton, originally from Trenton, New Jersey. I live in Oakland now. But you know what I mean, when you're from the city and you're from around the way, and you have you can go either way. So you know what I mean. You could, you know how to deal with the. I'll just say, let me be quiet and let you respond. So what comes to mind, Mohamed?
Well, so before it's funny you said before I graduated from Morehouse. I won't say anything about Howard. I'll just say I graduated from Morehouse.
The house.
So I grew up a little north of Tremayne. I grew up in Orlando. Much different then than it is now, in terms of just folks who live there and who grew up there. So when I was coming up, aged myself a little bit. So I was a DJ in high school, and I thought that's what I was going to do. So I know Tremaine's gonna know these people. I knew 69 Boys, Quad City. Those are my guys. And so when I got to college, I ended up, I thought we were gonna, do a label. So me and one of my boys, we started a label. We actually got a P&D deal through Jermaine Dupri and Eric Sermon. And I might be dating myself, because I'm sure a lot of people sitting there say, who? Jermaine Dupri? Eric Sermon, what was that? But it goes back to that's a long way of saying, yeah, I do. I was not professionally trained. You know what I mean? The way I present myself now is much different than how I was when I was in high school and college. I just happened to be a good student. I happened to take tests really well. I was never really a good student. I remembered stuff, and I picked things up, and I took tests really well. So I was able to progress. It wasn't until I got to B school that I actually became a real student. But yeah, so I don't have a nickname that I can't sit here and be like, well, I mean, I do, but this is a different forum. So, but yeah, and that really does play a part in who I am. I'm still very much, you talk about emotions and whatnot. I have no problem letting people know how I feel. I mean, I'm appropriate. I'm not, cursing and hollering and yelling.
Right.
But if I'm upset, I'm upset. And y'all need to figure out how to deal with this. Because I have actual money in this, so it's not like I'm just sitting here. So a lot of what Tremaine's saying speaks to me in terms of, you present a different way because, you're now I'm in my 40s and, and I have responsibilities for stuff, professionally. But, you know, that guy back from Orlando who, you know, who thought that this is the way to be and this is the life to live, and, you know, everything Edgerrin James was talking about in his Hall of Fame speech, you know, you thought, you know, that's, you know, you're sitting here saying, okay, yeah, that really speaks to me. That's still there, and that's important. You know, it goes back to your whole question about authentic leadership. It's important to recognize who that person is, and you don't, you know, you can't let them come out as they are, because I mean, we all grow up, right? You have to grow up and mature and learn how to express yourself appropriately in different situations, but you also don't stamp that part of yourself down. You keep that going, so when it's appropriate, that person informs, you know, that person informs Mohamed. You know, that guy be like, Mohamed, you're getting kind of weak here. You need to figure out what it is that you really want and go after it and make it happen. So
love it, love it. So I also want to I want to hear Usama. And one other thing I'll just put in context in terms of just kind of remembering from around the way, and I'll say, and I'll even say, you know, in the white community, because my name is Jeffrey David, it seems to be okay and fine. In the Black community, I wish I had a name more like Mohamed, Usama, you know what I'm saying, in the Black community. But, you know, there's a difference from around the way. And later in life, you know, once one of my friends from around the way got my work number and called and heard my voice message and the way it sounded, he was like, dude, what's up with your voice? It was just like, he was just so used to, you know, back in the day, what up, hey, you know, versus the corporate. So just curious, Usama, or excuse me, yes, Usama, based on your experiences, do you have a peanut in your background, so to speak, you know, from, you know, your DC friends knowing you from back in the day versus where you are today?
Absolutely. The entire time I hear you all's stories, it reminds me of childhood. It reminds me of, you know, you all went to HBCUs, Bethune-Cookman, Morehouse, Howard. I went to Kent State, and that's Northeast Ohio. It is not at HBCU. It is PWI all the way. And don't get it twisted. I love the fact that I went there because it opened up my eyes to another aspect of life that I didn't really know about. You know, I wasn't used to being a minority coming up in that DMV. I was used to everyone looking like me. You know, my brother went to Howard, you know, so I was used to seeing that. I hung out in those places, and everybody was used to hearing me speak that way as well. When it came to, you know, terms of endearment, when it came to greetings, you know, it all was new to my coaches at Kent, to other individuals, to classmates, to professors. And I think my adaptation was more so not to fit in. It was more so to not offend or confuse. When I'm saying young to people, and young is like, what's up, young? That's like my man, my dude, whatever. But they were like, what? Why your last name is Young? All right, never mind. Let me X that out of my vocabulary. You know, when it came to talking to coaches, I used to mumble. At least that's how they would say, you know, open your mouth, man, speak up. And I started to enunciate more clearly, so, because I didn't want to have to repeat myself over and over again when I communicated. When I got with my boys, they would, you know, it would go right back to how I spoke. You know, coming around the way, Northeast, Largo, wherever, it was one of those things. But the thing that I really realized my change was when I started to lock my hair. I was in my junior year at college. A couple of my coaches, they saw me twisting the hair. They were used to seeing me with the clean cut, the Caesar, the fade, whatever. And they're like, what are you doing? Why are you locking? Why are you twisting up? I was like, you know what? Time for something new. My mom had locks for about 40 years. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to switch it up. And I held true to it. But it was so funny to see how people changed up how they viewed me when I was locking my hair. And now, even being in the professional ranks in the corporate space, I still remember when I exited the game, it was some people that were saying, yo, you going to cut your hair? And I laughed at it. And we can all laugh at that because it's like, are you serious? You know, because we're true to ourselves. But I knew in the back of a lot of people's minds, it's like, yo, he's going to at some point. And I think that's part of my authenticity. I'm like, yo, no way. This is who I am. And if I do decide to, it isn't going to be because I want to fit in. It's going to be because this hairline's getting a little light and it's time to cut it off. But that was something that I truly embraced, because it was a challenge to an extent to, you know, to get everyone to understand, hey, this is this guy, this is where he comes from, he can speak this language. But at the same time, he still knows how to communicate to different people, different groups of people, whether they be from the South, the North, different countries. It's like, okay, we can all speak this language of being straight up and being real.
Love it, love it. And I'd love to hear other thoughts on the Crown Act, specifically around appearance. And I know, you know, as of now, you know, I'm going to the clean look, because if I let it grow in, I don't want to have that George Jefferson look. I know Tremaine can relate, but I'd love to hear Mohamed and Tremaine, what are your thoughts about that in terms of appearance, even the Crown Act in terms of hair? We heard Usama mention it, but from your environments, what are your thoughts?
You go ahead, Tremaine.
I think, yeah, for me, it's interesting. I think, especially now with me rejoining the Gap, I've been fortunate enough to work for companies where that's really not, like, the Gap is such a creative company. And so it's normal for you to see people with face tattoos, neck tattoos, visible tattoos, you know, period, hair, no hair, all types of hair. It's just that creative space. And so that's really never been a factor, you know, for me. I think that even if I would have to go back to decades and decades, and when I lived in different environments like Missouri, where it's like predominantly Caucasian and I was the only, you know, African-American, where it maybe was a factor, but it hasn't been a factor for so long for me. I think, you know, California is just a different place and space, and the Bay Area is a different space. So I really haven't had to deal with that from a corporate standpoint.
Cool. And
I don't know what part of California you live in, because because I have to make a conscious choice damn near every day. I mean, it's you know, I definitely deal with the institutional investors. I mean, these are folks who are, you know, these are the multi-billion-dollar funds, people who've got $80 billion, you know, $2 billion. I mean, like, they have real, they're trying to allocate capital. And going back to, I can't remember who said it. Maybe it was Usama, maybe it was Jeff, where, you know, folks are really comfortable giving money to folks that relate to them. You know, I mean, that's, you know, you're sitting here saying, hey, at the end of the day, when you invest in something, you're really, you know, you're investing in a project and all that. But at the end of the day, you're sitting here saying, do I believe Mohamed and his partner can actually deliver what they say they can deliver? And it's real easy when Mohamed and his partner kind of relate to them in some way. You know, so a lot of times, you know, Columbia Business School, investment banking background, having worked at other shops that do this same kind of development, that helps them get comfortable. But, you know, my friends always say they can tell when I've had to have a meeting with the investors, because my hair's a little more padded down. I mean, because I have the, you know, I mean, you know how my hair is, Jeff. I mean, this background doesn't really do it justice. It makes it look a little more I don't know, kept than it normally is. But you know, between that and you know, and the beard, you know, it's almost like my clothes offset all that in people's minds. They're kind of like, all right, guy has regular clothes on. This is good. We can deal with it. You know, but it's hard though. I mean, it's hard because it's like, as soon as I leave, I'm trying to go out and be myself and whatnot, and that's hard to do. You know, I used to have the ball cut. And then I realized, you know, I saw my grandparents, and I was like, let me grow hair as long as I can until I can't anymore.
Right.
Exactly. You know, but yeah, so it's a real thing. I mean, it's a real thing, and I you know, in a lot of ways, I'm envious of Tremaine. You know, one, just having been in environments where people can do. I couldn't even imagine a face tattoo showing up at a meeting where I mean, white, black, whatever. I couldn't imagine anybody with that kind of thing. I don't even know how that would go. So I'm a little envious of that. I've never had an experience where, you know, where you sit around and you're like, all right, that's cool. So anyway.
So we got a few questions from the audience, and I want to make sure we get to as many as we can. So here's a question that I see for all the panelists, and maybe because I'm seeing a few, maybe I'll narrow it to one, and I'll give Usama, if you don't mind. This question says, since we have quite a few women in the audience, what would be your advice to women who are listening regarding being, I'm sorry, not for, that's not for Usama, that's going to be for Tremayne, but let me read, there's one other one I had for you, Usama, and that is, some of you mentioned being raised by a single mom. And let me just clarify, who on this call, and I'm one of them, who have been raised by a single mother of the panelists? Tremayne? All right, so I guess Tremayne, this will be for you then. How can single mothers help foster authentic leadership in their young Black sons?
Wow, I think one is, just supporting them. I think that, not telling them that they can't do this and they can't do that. You can do anything that you put your mind to. My mother taught me a few lessons. She always told me to shut up and listen. Like, you can't listen if you're always talking. So she would always say, just shut up and listen. And interestingly enough, any test that I've taken, I score very high on listening comprehension. I may not score high on math or some other areas, but listening comprehension is one of those areas for me. I'm a listener. I'm an introvert, and so I think listening would be the one skill mothers can support. Showing up, right, and just showing up, like being there, like supporting. One other thing about my mother is she always told me to look people in the eye. She said, when you look people in the eye, like you can learn a lot of things by looking people in the eye. And she always, don't look down, just look them right in the eye. And you can tell a lot of things by looking people in the eye. And just being real. So for me, I kind of, like I said, there's this balance. I would do the corporate thing and I'll throw some big words at you, but there's a way that I maneuver typically in a corporate space. Like Peanut typically will say, WTF. That's kind of that's what Peanut would be thinking.
Right.
But Tremayne will kind of come in and just pose a question to an executive to have them to think about something that they just said that really could have been offensive. And so I'm always careful with that. And it happens on a consistent basis. But the way that I approach it is question. So from a single parent standpoint, I think it's just really showing up, listening, being there and showing that support and not being so. Sometimes mothers can be the mama bear, and sometimes you have to be that mama bear, but also kind of know when to let go of the pen, as I say, and let the person just kind of learn on their own.
Yeah, and thank you for that. One other thing I'll just throw out is make sure that they do have male role models. There's a lot of organizations and groups that support young men, such as the 100 Black Men of the Bay Area. So just wanted to put that out there. We have a variety of women in the audience. So this is for anybody who would like to answer it. We've been talking about authentic leadership from the perspective of being Black men. What advice would we have for women who are listening regarding being authentic in the corporate world?
I'd be happy to share my thoughts on this. I immediately go to my firsthand experience of observing my mother, who, big shout out to moms. She went to earn her doctorate while raising 7 young men. And my brothers, all of us were not easy to deal with while doing that, but she earned her doctorate. She went to be a professor at IU, then a dean, and now a chancellor at IUPUI. And I've watched her throughout. I've been able to sit in and see her engage in meetings. And it's always something that I've admired in terms of her. She never lacks any type of, she never has any type of hesitancy when it comes to showing that, hey, I know the answer and I'm going to share this with you all. And if she doesn't know the answer, she will ask the question so that she can. And when it comes to challenging the status quo, I think it can be a little daunting at times, but I've seen her do that as well. And she's encouraged me to do that as a young Black man. Now, I've started my corporate or professional ranks in this space 5 years ago. And I ask her for her wisdom when it comes to, oftentimes questioning who might be in leadership or even leading a group of individuals. And she says, stand firm. Stand firm. You have your non-negotiables and you stand firm to those non-negotiables. And whatever those values are, whatever you truly do believe in, you stay true to it. And if once you do, that's when you'll lose that credibility or that respect within your team or the group of individuals that you work with or manage. So that would be what I've observed and some of what I've taken into account from being a Black man in this space.
The power of values and holding to them. To thine own self be true. So another question I didn't want to overlook, and that is, speak to any of the challenges you faced when going from individual contributor to a corporate executive, or I'll say a people leader, and how have you overcome those challenges? So and all of us were individual contributors at one point, part of the team, and then all of a sudden now we're leading and influencing others. How has those challenges from an authenticity perspective impacted us? Or how have we overcome those challenges?
I think a few things I wrote down on that question was, I think that as an individual contributor, I was focused on getting things done quick. Like as many things as I can get done, that's what I was focused on as an individual contributor. And I think that when you shift to executive or director or managing people, it's more about how things are done, not like the things getting done in a quick way, but it's just like how in an efficient way. Summaries, the way that I write and talk is different. So I know that I function better on paper for me. And so I will formalize thoughts on paper in bullet point format when I'm sending over executive summaries to leaders. I don't write in narratives, which is typically my preferred style, but those are a few things for me that I had to switch very quickly from an individual contributor to a leader or manager of others.
All right, so I'm going to ask one other question that I see from the audience, and then I am going to provide you all with an opportunity for closing comments. Just recognizing the time, and I want to do my best to honor the time. So the other question that I see is for everyone.
Jeff, you're muted.
Oh, really? I'm muted?
We can hear you now.
Oh, it just says your internet connection is unstable. Really? Out of all the times. All right. So question is, how has being involved in organizations like the 100 Black Men, Alpha Phi Alpha, Kappa Alpha Psi, even the NFL changed your perspective of being a Black male in America? Do you feel like organizations like this support you being yourself?
I'll say it goes back to my experience with HBCUs. That was the first time I'd ever seen just a large group of folks who are my age come from families that look like, the Huxtables or whatever. Before then I thought it was a real rarity, but so as I get older and I look now and I think about my kid, how how she's growing up and what my friends are like and how their kids are. It reinforces kind of your innate greatness in a lot of ways. You sit here and you have a lot of people who do a lot of different things, and they're all really good at what they do. And it just reinforces to you that you're not really the unicorn that, society wants to make it out to be. Like, all my friends do really well. And then I'm on this panel, I meet more people who are doing really well. And I don't just mean my money, I'm just talking about like making an impact and being that shining star that folks look up to. And I think when you look at, whether it's the Divine Nine or, the 100 or the Boulé or whatever, those are just organizations that really kind of sit here and reinforce visually and socially the greatness that we have, that we have. And I also want to sit here and say, we focused a lot on kind of being your authentic self, you know, with folks who don't look like us. I do want to sit here and say, sometimes it is difficult to be your authentic self with us as well. Like we're not a monolith.
Right.
Black folks are not a monolith. We don't all sit here and have the same values and the same views and there's some things that each of us have that you can find yourself in a situation that's not really cool. You know, you talk about the name, Jeff. I know some people personally. So when I was in New York, remember that book, Our Kind of People?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I knew the author of the book, right?
Yeah.
It was very, very clear, like, hey, your parents should not have named you Mohamed.
Wow.
You need to get a job. Like, you're lucky I met him when I was an investment banker, but he's like, you're lucky you got that job. He's like, your name should have been Jeffrey David Hatchell. You know what I mean? That's what he would have said. So
right.
I want to reinforce to folks that, you know, all of us ain't all of us, right? I mean, we're all individuals and understand your authentic self comes into play in a lot of different ways. So, yeah, I'll leave with that.
Love it. Love it. Let's, I want to give all of you an opportunity. I like that. For closing comments. So we are at the top of the hour. So let's go. I'll go in the opposite order that we started in. So Tremaine, if you don't mind, for closing comments, and then we'll transition from Tremaine to, we started with Mohamed, so we'll end with, well, you know what, I'm gonna end with Usama since he was in the middle last time. So Tremaine, you're gonna kick us off, then Mohamed, and then Usama, you're gonna bring us home.
Yeah, closing comments, I would say what's really important to me is the sooner you can figure out who you are as a person, I think that's the quicker you'll get to being authentic. You know, I really focused on what Mohamed just said, and it's really true. It runs true for me. I think it took me a while to get to this level of who I was and accepting who I am as a person. And I think that leads into my authenticity today. And to me, that authentic has definitely evolved over a period of time. One of the last statement I wanted to say, and I typically don't say this a lot, this vocal, I am a proud Black gay male, and I generally don't pounce on that other piece. But after being in the workforce for 20 plus years and hiding who I was as a person, I've worked on that. And so I'm proud to say that most people actually describe me as authentic today because I've worked so hard at it for over 10 years. So I think just spending time with who you are, figuring out who you are as a person and what works for you, the quicker you can do that, the more authentic you'll be.
I love it. Recognizing and admitting who you are and being comfortable with it and being out there. Otherwise, you're hiding, you're not authentic. And again, it creates all types of emotional issues and challenges because it's all, you know, versus, you know what, this is who I am. So, Mohamed.
I mean, it's hard to follow that because, I mean, he hit it right on the head. I mean, the only thing I would add is once you find out who you are, you got to believe in your heart that you're just as good as anybody else, if not better. You know, it's one thing to find out, it's one thing to know who you are, but you also got to believe who you are is just as good as anything else. And once you have that, I just believe you can push through it. So I'll just echo what Tremaine said and just add that piece. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Usama.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm gonna say you put the pressure on me now, man. In this thing. No,
you know you can handle it.
I'll embrace it. I'll embrace it. And again, I do like my brothers on this call did. I'm going to echo what they said. I will add compromise. You know, we don't want to compromise. We do understand that there are times when you've got to, you know, shift your approach, but to compromise your values, that's when we limit transformational change. And all in all, I think we're all for that positive change. We're all for bettering ourselves and others around us, and specifically the teams that we lead. Don't compromise, be authentic, be real, be genuine. All that comes into play. And that's how we see the real change that we really want to have and hold true to. So thank you. Thank you.
Much appreciated. And on that note, I do want to thank each and every one of you in terms of the panelists for all that you share. This topic is very relevant and critical, and we all know what we just went through last year. It seemed like for the world, there was a reckoning that happened in our community and beyond. And I almost feel like, this is an opportunity for us to leverage it and to help create awareness for others. And I know there was one last comment I know I saw that I wanted to try to get to, but I think it's kind of, now I just keep seeing, okay, how do you stay authentic when you're challenging? When you are challenging peers that not a person of color behaving in a non-inclusive way, when you are challenging peers. So, and I'll just say it's important, even when you have somebody who's doing things in a non-inclusive way, they don't get it. Even more so, it's important for you to model and demonstrate what it looks like. The other thing I'll just mention in a closing comment, I like to say adapt, not adopt, meaning to your environment. Adopt meanings, not to be somebody you're not, but to remain who you are. And the analogy that I love to use is when you dance, and if everybody's, dancing to the same beat, same song, and especially if it's one of those songs where everybody's moving together, and you know what I mean, where it's like the Cupid Shuffle or something like that, you at the wedding and everybody's moving. But if you narrow in on each person, you'll notice Mohamed has a little twist. You'll notice Tremaine does a little backflip, when he does his little, moves. You'll notice Usama, he has another, version of it, but we're all flowing to the same beat in our own unique way. I view authentic leadership in that way, especially when you're in your environment. You don't want to be so distant and so different that it's like you're clashing, but you want to be your authentic self in such a way that you can flow in your environment. On that note, I'm going to transition back to Melsha or Maisha, and thank you for the opportunity.
Gosh, you can follow that, Jeff. It's like you just close this out. You're like amazing. I want to say thank you guys so much for this panel. This has been so insightful. Just to have like male role models here for everybody to hear. Make sure we're not echoing. I know, like Jeff, we've talked a few times, and you know how I feel about you. So I'm like, I get what I can from you, because it's just like the knowledge is so amazing, and so just like the transformation that you're helping like me with is just amazing. Like you don't even know you're doing, but you're doing. Mohamed, I've known you since I've been in the Bay Area, and you have been a mentor to me in my leadership roles. And so I know you, I know your hair, I know all about you as the 100 Black Men president, but just as a friend, like the support you give and who you are, you're very authentic. So I totally appreciate that. Tremayne, it has been a blessing to get to know you. I'm excited to know you more, and I can't wait to meet you in person one day. And Usama, we've had conversations, and you already know, I think you are absolutely amazing. You are so authentic, and it just, the work that you're doing, it's so unbelievable. It's amazing. So I just thank you guys so much for being on this panel and taking the time out of your day to like be here with us, be present with us. And so I'm gonna let Melsha go ahead, some closing comments, and then I'll share my screen.
Maisha said it all. Thank you so much for attending today and speaking authentically on leadership. We've learned so much. There's so many gems and so much wisdom. And as we mentioned before, it wasn't just for the men, the women got a lot out of it too, because showing up authentically is something that we are all trying to strive to do. And that's very important, especially as we know with the awakening of a lot of things that has come to the surface, is even more important for us as leaders to show up authentically. So I just wanted to thank you for all the comments, for sharing who you are and your leadership. And I want to thank everyone for joining our conversation as well.
Okay, unmute. Okay, so thank you guys again for joining us. So we have an upcoming event at the end of this month, August 22nd. If you are comfortable with being outdoors, you're vaccinated, and you want to just come meet with us, network, socialize, get to know some people in the Bay Area from our chapter and some supporters. Register for our upcoming event on August 22nd. This is our annual barbecue. We just went fancy and changed the name, but it's our annual barbecue. And so we're gonna have a good time there. Like Jeff said, we're gonna do the Cupid Shuffle. I will be the person doing the twists and turns, who's always out doing her own thing. But we would love to see you there. We have our national conference coming up in September. And so it's a virtual conference and it's in-person conference. So if you're able to join us virtually, September 14th through the 18th, you'll get the keynote speakers and all the conference presentations and some of the Career Expo. If you're not able to join us for that week and you just want to see the Career Expo, join us the following week on the 21st and the 22nd to visit the Career Expo. And I would like to invite anybody who is not already a San Francisco Bay Area chapter member or a National Black MBA member to join our chapter or just join the organization itself. Our chapter is holding a special until August 31st. Mohamed, we would love to have you in our chapter. August 31st is our deadline for our promo code. And so if you're interested, I will send that out tomorrow morning. You'll have the promo code along with the post-event survey. And if it's okay with the panelists, can I add your LinkedIn to our post survey or post email? Perfect. So you'll have the LinkedIns of our panelists along with this video recording. So you'll get that all tomorrow around 8:30 a.m. All right, so that is it for the night. I do want to thank you guys again for joining us and have a good night.
Thank you. All right.
You're welcome.